but those who are starting to join us, welcome. My name is Ryan Stanley. I am an admissions coach here at iPEC Coaching. I'm a graduate from the program from 2009. I've been working with the program in some capacity since then, and in the admissions department since 2012. I'm super excited to be here today as we interview one of our stellar graduates, Paul Silva. And Paul, welcome. Thank you for being here with us.
Hey, Ryan, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Really excited.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. And it's funny, I was saying kind of before we got started, you and I, we might be connected through just the Facebook community, like on some level, just ended up following each other on Instagram and social media.
Yes.
And so it's cool, like, you know, when I saw your name come on the list of like people to be interviewed, I was like, oh my gosh, I know this guy, I like this guy, I follow this guy. I was like, this is perfect. So it was cool to actually get some in-person hang time. So appreciate you being here and all that you're doing so far. And I've done, and obviously we'll get into that. As the call goes on. But just real quickly for everybody out there in internet land, this is going to be an hour-long conversation. There's no particular agenda except for yours. And maybe we'll get into that. As you know, being a coach, one of the things about being a coach is really the ability to hold the client's agenda, right, as often as possible while we're going through our conversations. And so here we are today for you in that same capacity. So, you know, all of your questions today are going to be for Paul about his experience, maybe before, and we'll, you know, I'll set up with some introductory questions, but his experience before becoming a coach, why he chose iPEC, what his experience was like during the training, and obviously what he's been able to do since then. Just for some housekeeping in general, on the bottom of your screen, if you're joining us on the Zoom, you'll see a button that says Q&A. Feel free just to click on that, and that would be the space for the Q's, and then Paul will do the A's. If you're joining us on Facebook, there's obviously an area for you to, you know, you guys know the Facebook thing. There's comments below our video, and so feel free to ask them there. And we will get to them as we go through the call. So again, thank you all for being here. Thanks for making the time to join us. And you know, no question is too silly. If there are questions more about how the iPEC training works specifically, that might not necessarily be the best for this particular call. iPEC does do regular Q&A calls with admissions coaches on a weekly basis, and so you could sign up for them for some of the more the intricate details of iPEC's training. So today we really want to make it mostly about Paul's experience as an individual pre, during, and post iPEC, and as a coach that is, you know, being a part of the change he wants to see in the world. So with that, let me just give a quick introduction. Paul, after 25 years in the hospitality industry as a chef and a leader, Paul took a big leap into the unknown. He became an iPEC certified professional coach and set out to grow a full-time coaching practice, and today he is doing just that. He helps people who are out of the initial and darkest stages of addiction recovery step into an aligned, vibrant, and passionate life because, you know, they didn't go through all the challenges of, you know, getting into sobriety to be just okay. And I love that, by the way. So he offers one-on-one and group coaching. He's a host of the Buzzkill podcast, and it is author of Longing for the Spirit, a funny, spiritual, and fully transparent collection of essays and stories as a refreshing approach to recovery. He's here today to answer all of your questions about coaching, his training, and his journey. So welcome, Paul. Thanks for being here, man.
Oh, thank you. And it is fun to be connected online and then actually talk like this. It's like, and it's so funny how we present ourselves. It's exactly how we do it across the board. So like, I do get a sense I know you as well. So it's like, cool. This is just like having a coffee and a chat.
Yep. And often that's what coaching is in general. But I think we have a lot of similarities just in our style and approach. Some of that probably comes from coaching, but also, you know, I think we're both dads and we both have had various experiences in entrepreneurship and just connection. So again, super stoked to be here. So maybe we can start off just with some basics. You know, I guess, tell me just a little bit about your story. Like, let's bring the audience up to date. Like, what was your story before you decided to even look into coaching? And then maybe a little bit like what had you, you know, tell me at the start when you started looking into iPEC or other programs, like what that was like for you.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. You know, as was mentioned, I was a chef for 25 years and really loved it. Passionate, was just, you know, it was everything. It was my world. And, you know, I did well. I did quite well, actually. And in that time, you know, and this is part of my story, and that's the only why I'm mentioning is that, with that lifestyle, but there was something within me that also there was a darker side to that, and that was, addiction, that was alcoholism. And so it was quite a journey just in that, really trying to perform at a high level while really struggling with this thing going on within me. And, luckily it's been great. It's been, I got sober in 2011. And so it's been about 8.5 years. And so I was really able to just boost my, just being authentic. It was the first time I really got tapped into my authentic self, which had been hidden all this time.
Yeah.
And in the last couple of years of my career, I started to kind of get a tap on the shoulder that there was something else calling me. I didn't know what though. I had no idea what it was, but I just knew that the passion had started to wind down in what I was doing. And so I started to just do this search inside, like, what is it? What is it that I want to do? And I didn't quite know. And in many ways, it was kind of in front of me this whole time. I had, not only was I working at fine dining and hotels and all that kind of stuff, I was also, I had been working with people in recovery with men mostly, and helping them in their journey as they were starting to get new to recovery. So I was doing a lot of one-on-one. I was doing a lot of really deep kind of spiritual and mindset work, all that kind of stuff. And I remember one evening, I had a call from someone, and because I'm very active online as well, and someone had called and said, I need to talk to you. And we spoke. And I was going to bed, and my wife said, and she knew of my struggle in trying to figure out what I was doing. She goes, "You should be a coach." And my response was, "Nah, I don't want to be a coach. What is that all about?" So, my no machine just kicked in, but
yeah, of course,
it planted a seed, right? And, she's a psychotherapist and she's a coach in her own right. And it wouldn't leave me alone. That thought would not leave me alone. And I reached out to a friend of mine who was also in the recovery circles, and she had just become a coach. And I said, "Tell me more about this, because I'm really curious." And I said, she told me about it.
I mean,
really,
I'm not interested. I'm
I am
definitely still
so
saying
not
no,
interested.
right.
This is
Totally.
just for science. Hashtag science. This is what it's about.
Right.
And she told me she went to iPEC. And so I did my internet sleuthing. And what was great is that what was it for me was that it aligned with so much of what I had done in like work with recovery and just my own kind of values and all that. So I started to take it seriously. And then finally it turned. I said, you know what? I made a committed decision. I said, I've got to do this. And I could see at work, like already just making that decision, I was starting to get excited. And at work, I mean, I still gave 110%, but I knew that where I was working there would be the last kitchen I'd be in, a professional kitchen.
And this was about a year ago, like fall of 2018?
That was in 2018. In 2018. And so I had, and so I started, I looked into it and I registered, I signed up and all that, and I got all that, and I was ready to rock. And so I was still working full time when I started my iPEC journey.
Yeah. And so what about iPEC? When you were kind of in that space of doing some research and kind of looking into different programs, what stood out to you about iPEC when you were, kind of, I mean, obviously it came as a referral, right? So that's a great place to start. Obviously the person that you respected. And so there's any place to start, but then you must have done some research and checked out the website. While you're doing that, what stood out to you about the program to even kind of take that step in the water?
Yeah, great question. I did look at one or two other places, but it was just something, as soon as I started reading it and talking about energy and all that, it just clicked. Like, honestly, it was one of those, I'm like, I don't think I need to search anymore. Yeah. Like I found, it's just when you connect with someone or something, like it just, there's like, it was just like a boom, there it is.
Well, and in coaching, we talk a lot about intuition, right? On some level, like there's pieces when you know when something is right for you. And you obviously do your due diligence, but when you feel a connectivity to the basics, sometimes that's where you go with your gut and start continuing the conversation from there. And that sounds like what you did. That's awesome.
Yeah. Man. Yeah, Alex. It was exactly. And that was it. And it was just that knowing, that inner knowing that's it. Found it. Yeah. Done. Where do I sign?
And so did you start in November or March of 2018, 2019? Like what was your schedule like?
I started March of 2018.
Okay. Great.
And so then I had, I went through all the mods, and then I was by late November, I had I had graduated. I'd completed everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then, so tell me just a little bit about like getting clients. Like when you first stepped into, like you said, I mean, you're coming out of the space that you've been in there for 25 years. You've been a chef.
Mhm.
You had the, I mean, obviously you had the piece of connectivity through recovery, but like actually, okay, now I need to step outside that. Now I've worked in my last kitchen. I know that this is what I'm doing now. Talk a little bit about, so, you know, some people out there know what it's like to, like, where were you in the space of building up your first clients and what that looked like and felt like for you?
Yeah, and that's the question I get the most is like, how did you get that? Because you're always looking for that first. You want the
Yeah,
first. I just
right.
let me get that first one.
Yeah.
And it was, this is where, it's where you start to connect and talk to people about it. That was what I did. And so I had left in September, and originally I was going to leave in December at the end of the year, but I had here's the funny thing. I had 3 people on one day, and not talking about anything in particular. All 3 of them had said to me, "Why are you waiting till the end of the year?" And I did that coach thing where I turned around, "Why am I waiting till the end of the year?" And, and so I left in September. So my first thing, of course, is like, okay, let's start getting some clients. And what it was just really getting out there, and talking about it. I can have a great website. I can have all the snazziest business cards and all that. But unless I'm telling people what I'm doing and
Yeah.
getting out there, I went through my kind of my Rolodex. I'm kind of dating myself, but I had my Rolodex and going through all the people. So people I haven't known, like I hadn't talked to in 10 years, 12 years.
Yeah.
I called them or emailed them a message, said, "Hey, I'd love to meet for coffee. I want to tell you what I'm doing." And I did that, so
Yeah.
going back and just really, because we all have people, when we're all connected, we have networks, we don't know who other people know. So it's really going out there and stepping out and really just claiming, like, this is what I do and this is how I
Yeah.
help people. And they may not have been clients, but they knew people who may
Absolutely.
need someone. And one thing I did in stepping out of, one thing that we do, we ask our clients, and we do ourselves, is to stretch ourselves to get out of
Yeah.
our comfort zone. And so I went to a BNI, which is a networking
Yeah.
thing.
Business Networking
So
International, is that what it's?
yeah, is Business Networking International. And I'd never done that. So I went there, and I thought it would be a great way to not only talk about it, but just to get into the entrepreneurial, space as well. And that is where I got my first client, was a member there. And then once that started to go, also social media, getting out there
Yeah.
in that way you talked about at the top. And then
Yeah.
I started to get, that's where most of them come now. But it was really just getting out there and just talking about it and showcasing yourself a little bit, and most importantly, what the benefits of coaching has on them, what it
Right.
can have for them.
Totally. And it's funny because, I often say this to people, your product isn't coaching. I mean, obviously that's what we do, but your product is clarity. It's
Mm-hmm.
efficiency. It's accountability. It's forward momentum. It's joy. It's freedom. It's self-awareness. And when we show people, if that's actually what they get from working from us, we don't give that to them. They really find it within, but by
Mm-hmm.
working with a certified coach and working through the coaching process. And when you share that, that's what they're going to get from working with you. It becomes a no-brainer,
Yeah.
right? And then the other piece to this, I think, would also be that and I'm really just kind of speaking to our audience out there, is that as you kind of pointed out, you're already in this space where you're connecting with others, you're connecting with people in recovery, you have an understanding of what it's like to kind of serve others.
Mm-hmm.
And people are probably coming to you for guidance, advice, clarity anyway, right? And so to your point, when you go into this Rolodex and you say, hey, this is what I'm doing now, people are neither surprised, shocked, nor offended, right? It's not like, oh, it's like, of course you are. I bet you're an amazing coach. Like, and then even if they know, because coaching is growing so quickly right now, people really start to understand the value of having a coach, that to your point, even if it's not them who's looking for a coach, but there's others, they have friends, they have family, they have people
Mm-hmm.
who are just having conversations like, oh, I'm thinking about bettering myself.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about getting a coach. Oh my gosh, my buddy Paul just sent me an email last week. This is what
Yeah.
he's doing now. So that's awesome. Love it. And I just want to see something popped up on the chat here. Oh, go ahead. They were just saying, hey, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A, which is a good space to be.
Don't be shy.
But we did, yeah, exactly. I mean, this conversation is to serve others, as much of coaching is. We did have some that came in through the email, though. Well, and so one of the first ones says, like, what's the best way to get your name out there in public as a life coach? It sounds like you kind of talked about that a little bit, word of mouth, having conversations as often as possible. How do you deal with coaching and with a coaching situation with a negative person that wants to feel better but stays stuck in the negative?
Yeah. Yeah, that does happen. And, you have people who, you may get clients who they say they want to, they want to improve themselves, but the actions, are showing otherwise. And a lot of that is our programming, our, what we're also, our gremlins, like
Yep.
in terms of, a lot of that comes from fear.
Yep.
And a lot of that comes, primarily that. And so, and they're stuck a lot of times. And so, because they haven't known any other way to handle and cope with things other than maybe to vent about it, or have a really low level energy kind of reaction. And so what we do in coaching is, we do a lot of acknowledging and validating. And because a lot of times people haven't been heard. Like,
Right.
so many people come and it's the only space they have where someone actually hears them.
Yeah.
Really hears them. And when they're in that space, there sometimes can be a big energy shift, and just being heard, and me telling them, what I'm hearing is this, and what I sense is this. And even that alone can make a switch in terms of how people show up, and their perspective, and how they see themselves, and how they see, the world. And, sometimes it takes a little bit longer, and sometimes it's really quick, but it's really just staying where they're at. This is not about trying to fix anyone. This is staying where they are, meeting the client where they're at, and then moving them along. We're kind of like Sherpas, and we may see the lay of the land different than they do, but we're there just to be with them as a guide. So it's always really about meeting the client where they're at, and not making any judgments about, oh, are they being negative? Or it's just, that's what they see right now. Yeah. Because of X, Y, and Z. And then you can unfold some of that, and then get into action, and how can we make that shift for them? So it's really about just being there with them.
And I love that. And, to your point earlier, it's not, sometimes it's also literally physical habits. Like, our body is physically used to being stressed, or physically used to being anxiety, with some anxiety, and these different things. And so that's not necessarily an easy place to come out of. And then the challenge also there, I think why coaching is so amazing, is because, we have family, we have friends, we have people who on some level love us, but have their own agenda, right? And their agenda may be that they don't want us to get hurt. And that might be based on their life experience, where they got hurt or something like that. So they're pushing this, which has nothing to do with us. Yeah. And so if someone's in this space of negativity, it might have something to do with people they've hung out with, or just what their daily habits have been. And so for you as a coach, you get to come in and kind of help them access the right side of the brain to be more creative and think about, what could I be doing differently to live a different life?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great way to put it.
Cool. Love it. There's a question coming in from Clara. Clara says, hey, Paul, one of the things I love about the idea of being a coach is that it is a stimulating job, and the process of self-development, even for ourselves as a coach, is a never-ending process. But when do you know you are ready? When did you feel that the training and the experience you had was enough to get started?
Yeah, that is a great question. It's really up to you. There are some people who, they started taking clients early on. Some people waited a little bit longer. My feeling is that, I think if you wait until you feel like you're totally ready, you're going to miss the boat. You have to jump in, and obviously, you're going to pick up some skills right away, and you can, right off the bat, you can start coaching. Now, I wanted to wait a little bit longer until I had a few more tools and stuff, which I obviously did learn. But, I was scared. I was, I had a little, because though talking about fears and doubts, we have them too. Of course we have them. And so I'm like, oh my God, am I doing this? Should I? But there's just no other way of getting that practice, of getting in there and help. And, I had to keep thinking to myself, and this is, just throughout my whole, entrepreneurship and being, talking to people and selling and stuff is, and being of service is, I have something that can help you. I have something I can do to help you. So it's incumbent on me to actually let you know that. Yeah. And so, I had to cast aside my fears and doubts and say, I'm ready-ish. I feel like, and there's always room for improvement. There's always room for growth. And that's what's so mind-blowing about this, what we do here, is that you mentioned earlier about, personal development. We're always doing that. I wouldn't ask anything of my clients that I wouldn't do of myself. And that is, again, stretching myself, developing, looking to the nooks and crannies of myself and seeing what's there, and turning the light onto things. And so it was just a matter of just jumping in and doing it. And so, and then once you start going, then you're like, oh, this is great. Like I could have even done this earlier. But there is no marker that says, okay, right now, grasshopper,
and
you're ready to go. There's no like, okay, go get him.
You're
Tiger.
no longer a Padawan. It's
You're no
longer. And how you are. Yeah, but I will say, and to that point, it's like the way iPEC trains that you are coaching, you are being coached, you're listening to others coach, you're giving feedback, you're getting feedback, you're working with a mentor. So you're immersing yourself in this process, and it really becomes more of who you are. And even for those first conversations, my first client was, I got about 2 weeks after Mod 1, and it was over the phone. And I was, to your point, I was like, okay, this is outside my comfort zone, but I know I can do it. I know I'm helping this person. And like, the first weekend of training, you have 30 hours worth of training, and you've got this workbook full of notes. And so like my first client didn't know that I had my notebook in front of me on the phone, right? Well, I was asking him some different things and kind of working my way through it. They just knew that nobody had had a conversation like this with them before. And I was asking them things and really, again, holding their agenda so high that I was really focused on who they wanted to be, that it didn't matter that I was, to your point, ready, right? I was ready to serve, and I knew that I was stepping into that with the best intentions and had the toolbox to start. And then to your point, the more you start doing it, you're like, oh, okay, I'm kind of doing this. Like I know what I'm doing, and I know why I'm doing it. And so to your point, whenever you're ready, you're ready. But sometimes not being ready is the best thing that can happen to you, and doing it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Derek Green says, should we also have a website, business cards, prior to networking and reaching out to our Rolodex? He just finished Mod 1, and they said, go get clients, and it's a little daunting. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that is a fabulous question. You don't need to have a website and business cards to get clients. You absolutely do not. It's just, you need to have a place to have that conversation, whether it's on the phone or whatever it is. In terms of marketing, I mean, that's a whole different beast altogether. But the most important thing is, it's you, right? And what you can offer and serve. And so if that is with friends and families and people they know, and people they know who know other people, just like I said, getting yourself out there. Business cards are just, business cards and web, websites, they're great for people to kind of like lurk and see who you are and all that. But it's not something like right off the bat, I would say you have to have. And I think a lot of people spend way too much time and money on those things, when really, you can spend that time kind of developing yourself and having lots of conversations, because even if you're just out there having these kind of these sessions and all that, word of mouth too, word of mouth is huge. A lot of, I've got a lot of returning clients, and they refer me to other people. And that has nothing to do with business cards and websites. That's really about just serving powerfully to your best. And then people having that experience, like, whoa. And they're like, you got to know, like, this really helped. And so it's good to have maybe at some point, but I wouldn't put so much effort and focus on just having that. Make the leap first, start going out there, talk.
There are tons of extremely successful coaches out there who don't have websites, or don't have awesome websites, or, all the above. And to the point of spending money and being stressed about it and worried, oh my gosh, I'm going to get this person. When you're first starting off, sometimes you just want to be there. And so social media in today's day and age gives you an opportunity to do that stuff for free anyway, right? Whether it be you can start a Facebook page just to kind of connect with people, you can do it on Instagram, all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But to your point, it's like, listen, just be out there and have conversations. And then the other thing is, when you're having these conversations, like what I found is that after you go through this program, after once you become a coach, you start to have more coaching conversations than you planned to, right? So, typically people like to complain about their life, right? In general, that's a broad brush to speak about, but like a lot of the time, and they're used to people complaining back. But now as a coach, when you go out in public, if you meet somebody and they start complaining, instead of complaining back, you just say, oh, well, what's a different way for you to look at that? Or, you can start giving them some options, and they're a little bit confused at first. And then, after 10 or 15 minutes, you have a powerful conversation with somebody, and they say, wow, what do you do for a living? And you say, well, I'm actually a certified coach. And they're like, well, I'm not surprised, right? And then you connect with them from there. And then, to your point also, if there's more opportunities for word of mouth from there, it's extremely helpful. So just be who you want to be as often as possible. I think is probably better than a business card.
Mm-hmm.
Megan says, what would you say to the people who are afraid of or are experiencing doubt about being able to be successful doing this for a living?
Can you repeat that? I'm not quite sure.
I just deleted it, but I think the gist was like, what would you say to people who are feeling like, hey, I'm not sure, like I like this, I know that I'm good with people, but I'm not positive that I can do this for a living. I'm not sure that I can replace my full-time income. I'm not sure that I'm ready to take that leap. I'm not sure that I will be that good. Right, I'm not good enough. Right, there's those gremlins.
There's the gremlin. Again, fears and doubts will come up, and this is now, we're talking about almost two different things. There's, you as a coach, you like with the skills and developing and all that, and then business, like having a business. And so, you can be the best coach, on your block in the world, but creating a business is very different, and so there are different ways, there's different models, in terms of how do I make this a viable full-time, gig. And so a lot of that definitely, as anyone can, who's run a business before, it's not so much what it is you do, whether it's a plumber or not, it's all the other parts, all the other stuff in business building. And so there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that has to get done, marketing, getting out there. And it does take time. It does take time to make that transition from a full-time, job where you may be now into making a full-time coaching career. There's going to be a bit of lag, maybe in terms of finances, or maybe not. Everyone's different in their journey with that. It's really, how much information are you taking in terms of on the business side? How much preparation are you taking and making? What I did personally is while I was studying and while I was doing my work at iPEC, I was already busy building all that stuff. Okay. Yeah. So everything, like all the, capturing payments, all that kind of stuff, everything, if you have to do any legal stuff, all that stuff I did while I was training. And so that when I got out, and also, seeing what other people have done, asking them questions, asking other coaches, entrepreneurs, what did you do? How did you do this? Marketing and all that. But that is all behind the scenes. But I was doing that in conjunction with my training, so that when I finished, I already had like a couple of clients, and then I just kept the ball rolling. And so that's a different skill set, but it's, we can all do it. It's totally doable. And what's great is that, you can build that up while you're building your coaching skills, while you're building your confidence, because a lot of it's going to come from confidence as well. Yeah. Because when you realize that this is something that a lot of people can use, like, being coached and feeling better about themselves, all the things you mentioned, clarity and you can do that, and people are willing to pay for it. Yeah. And so you can build into a full-time business and cast away more and more the doubts and worries, because you start to see it build, and you start to see the impact that you're having on other people's lives.
So patience obviously is there, perseverance, persistence. I think those are 3 P's that Napoleon Hill talks about a lot, right? Patience, persistence, persistence. But the other piece to that is also, as you're going through the training, I mean, iPEC does have a whole business development curriculum that's attached to the program, right? So that's a piece of it that you can use as well. So it's 2 things. Another thing I'll point out as well is, as you're going through this program and you're learning these different skills and tools to help others recognize their fears and their blocks, their limiting beliefs, we start recognizing some of the same things in ourselves. And so to this person's point around like, hey, well, what if I'm just not ready, or if I'm not sure I can do it? Well, you're actually going to have more of a, like you said, confidence in yourself, because you're learning to ask yourself powerful questions. Well, how true is it that I can't do this? What are some of my blocks? What are some of my fears? And the fact that you have, you're surrounding yourself with peers of coaches as well. You now have a whole community of individuals who are there to serve you as well. So that's part of it too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you so much. Did you already know what you wanted to specialize in before you started the training program? And do you have any advice for choosing a focus?
Yeah, the niche question. It's always a popular one, and an important one. And, when I first got into coaching, funny enough, I thought, well, it made sense. Maybe I'll do recovery. But it's funny because, we talk about fears and doubts. I started to create stories around, well, you know, who's going to pay for that? And, you know, is that really what I want to do? And so I tried different things. You know, I did like, you know, a little bit of career, then I did, you know, I did hospitality, and then I did all these things, but it just didn't feel right. And I stayed with them for a little bit of time. But again, the tap on the shoulder, eventually I came back to recovery. And, you know, what I ask people is like, you know, in terms of coaching, like, what is it that you can talk about all day? What is it that just lights you up in terms of, you know, what it is that you enjoy? You know, what do you read about? What do you Google? What do you spend money on? Like, what is that thing that you enjoy?
Yeah.
And perhaps that's what it is that you want to coach people on. And, you know, it can be, you know, as one of the instructors say, you know, your niche is you 5 minutes ago. And for many people, that's what it is. And, but, you know, once I nailed that one in terms of, you know, helping people in addiction recovery kind of up level their sobriety, it just felt right. It was just like putting on a suit or something that just fits really well. And what's amazing, what's funny is that a lot of coaches feel that if they get specific about who they want to serve, that they're going to lose like the majority of their clients. But what happens is, you know, people get to know, like, and trust you, and you'll get a lot of people saying, hey, I know you work, you know, with, you know, frazzled moms, or, you know, a corporate, you know, HR, but I'm kind of going through this. Is that something you can help me with? And you get that. You get a lot of that, actually. And so by niching down, not only are you helping just to really serve and focus on one market, which is great, but you also do get the residual. You get a lot of other people still coming around. So you're not going to lose out. You know, you're not going to don't come from a place of scarcity. Right. You know, the universe is abundant. People will come to you.
People feel like if I choose one area, am I putting off all these other people, the rest of the world? It's like, no, it's like the opposite. It's like you're going to be excited about who you're talking about every day. And you attract the people in your life that you're going to serve anyway. And that happens to me all the time. It's like when people come up and send things, it's like, hey, I'm not in that space, but I've enjoyed this conversation. Do you have room on your roster, type of a thing? And if
exactly. Yeah. And it happens way more often than we think.
Love it. Jerry Ann wrote, I am in recovery and I am interested in this direction. My conflict is getting money for what I do for free today as a sponsor. How is your coaching different from what a sponsor does? It's a great question.
Oh, that's a great question. I love that. Yeah. And, you know, because I sponsored as well, and it is different. You know, we're not taking people through a particular program, which is what we do in sponsoring. What we're doing is, what I do is I get people in recovery, and there's different modalities of recovery as well, right? It's not just the one. What I'm doing is just working with them to, you know, because in specifically with recovery, you know, we've had to put away our old way of thinking, our old way of, you know, who we hung out with, you know, who we hang out with, where we go. We've had to pretty much level out and remove a lot of what we used to do and who we are. And so there's that big question of what now, you know, and a lot in recovery, people say life is, the biggest complaint is people, you know, this is boring, or I don't know what to do. And so these are questions that maybe aren't necessarily recovery related, you know, in terms of like, what do I do? What now? You know, any sort of transition, because recovery really is just a different type of transition. Right. And so people, you know, like other clients, I have people who recently retired, people who haven't worked in a couple of years and trying to figure out what career they want. You know, people new into leadership roles. Like, these are other kind of clients that I've had, and they're all very much asking the same questions, like, what now? Yeah. And so in terms of, you know, the difference between sponsor and coaching is really, you know, really expanding on what's already there in terms of having a new life. There's a foundation, whatever program there is for recovery is kind of the foundation, but now we move from that. Now we open things up way more, just the way I would with anyone else. But what I like about recovery is that, first of all, I know it, and I know the language around it, and I know the mindset about people who have been through addiction. There's a certain way that we would think. Yeah. And so that is kind of an instant shorthand that I have with a lot of the clients. So that's one reason why they seek me. But it really is more about, you know, I'm not there I'm not a program. I'm there after they've started recovery. And it's really just to really blow up, what's there, and to really tap into the potential. Because for people in addiction, we went the other way. We played small. We took, we wanted to get us off of us. And now we
Right.
have a chance to really explore us. And that's the difference between coaching and, moving someone through a program of recovery.
Yeah, I love it. It's giving people opportunities to shine a light on the rest of the world as well, and see what the adventure could be if they choose it.
Yeah.
Right? And how to
Yeah.
unfold.
No, it's a great question.
So cool. When do coaches realize that the client is building up with their goals? I mean, when to wind up the session after 2 or 3 or 4 sessions or a year? So yeah, so I guess how long do your clients typically work with you? And like, at what point do you kind of realize, okay, it might be time to wind down? Or talk a little bit about that in general.
Yeah, and everyone comes to you with with something different in terms of what kind of goals they have. And so they generally come with either some bigger overarching goal, like we talked about, like what now. That's not something you can maybe figure out in a session or two.
Right.
Some people have something a little bit that would be great. Some people come with something very specific, and let's say 4 sessions. So in my packages, I'll have a 4 session, then 3 months, 6 months. And when I talk to these people, when we have that discovery call, when we're trying to figure out, what's the best way I can, support them, if they come up with that question, then, they may go, let's do 4. And a lot of times I have had, a lot of clients after 4, like, I know, they know that this is it. We're done here. And, right. There's a great, one thing to do as coaches, we're always checking in, right? We're always checking in what learning have you had? What's going on for you? How have you been integrating this? And, and looking at the results and seeing how they're feeling. And sometimes it's just it's a feeling, just a natural cutoff, and that happens. And then there are people, many of my clients are recurring, so they'll finish a certain amount and they come back. And so they're really working with the emergent, whatever's coming up for them at that time, which is going towards that overall goal. So it just really depends on, the client, what kind of outcome they're looking for, and how specific that question or goal is.
Awesome. Yeah. And I've even found sometimes what I'll do is we might work weekly for the first 3 months, and then after that go down to every other week, right? So you give them some more time to do some more work on their own, and they, so it's less time together, but it's almost kind of weaning them off, and then they get to a point, it's like, okay. And then to your point also, they might come back 6 months later, like, hey man, can we just do a month worth of sessions, right?
Yeah.
So it's about growth. It's about what are they getting from the conversation? It's not something you just do for the sake of doing. It's for the, you want there to be a planned outcome and something.
And to just jump on that too, I wouldn't keep someone on just for the sake of keeping them on, because it's not about, capturing another credit card number. It's really about, have I done everything that I can for them? And if they're done, they're done. And it's time for them to go out there and take that and grow on their own and do that thing on their own, instead of just kind of, again, that's coming from scarcity. I got to keep them, as opposed to, let them go.
Yeah. Go fly. Now you got the wings, do it. Awesome. What aspects of iPEC made the greatest difference to you?
What aspects? There's so many great, iPEC is fantastic. And there's so many aspects, from, just the actual, mods themselves, like the way it's set, like everything is great. I think, what drew me originally, again, is this, the energy, the energy levels, talking about energy. And I think it was that aspect, just that core, just the core energy, model, if you will, in terms of that. To me, still, I'm still opening that up. I'm still exploring. I'm still finding more in there, right? It seems simple, and in many ways it is, but really, once you open that, it's like that box. It's just there's so much in there. And I think for me, that kind of separates it from any other coaching modalities for me. And it also just, it ties in with just so many other ways. Like, we all come, whether you're spiritual or not, whether, what other sort of personal development things you do, it can tie into so many. And for me, recovery and just my own spirituality and all that, it was a perfect fit. And so for me, and always everything comes from that. That's the genesis of everything iPEC does, is through those energy, the core energy and the energy levels. And because that you can use that in so many ways, you know, just like with assessments that we have, you know, just in the conversations you have, any material, any exercise and all that you can do, all can come from that place of energy.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. When we start, because it's a nice way, because two people can have the exact same experience and have two completely different energies around it. And
Yeah.
when we start to
Oh,
understand
absolutely.
what the options are, and we can help them to kind of look at themselves from a detached perspective, or even
Mm-hmm.
just look at how they're showing up from a detached perspective, it gives them more buy-in on making the change, because it's not about the story, it's
Mm-hmm.
about the energy, right?
Yeah,
Two people have the
exactly.
same story. Cool. Something else. And actually, I have my own personal question, to be honest with you.
Sure.
I'm genuinely curious as a chef.
Yeah.
So one of the things I often say, let me just close this here, is like some of my biggest growth things from, you know, people say, what'd you get most out of iPEC or your training there? I always say it was like, you know, there's two sides of the same coin. First one is less judgment. And that's not to say that I was this tremendously judgmental person before, as much as it is that, you know, we're taught as coaches to recognize that our clients are exactly who they should be for every single second of life that led up until that moment. And for me to judge them as anything different would just not make sense or serve either one of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's obviously bled into other areas of my life. And the other side of that same coin is that I'm certainly more curious. And whether that be with myself or with others, instead of judging them for being different or bad, as much as I'm just genuinely curious as to how they got there, you know, who they are. And the same thing goes for myself. But so from a chef standpoint, as somebody who's been doing this for 25 years,
Yes.
you know, how has coaching, if at all, played a role in how you look at food differently and how you cook differently, you know, in that space that's kind of been an intimate part of your experience? I was just curious, like, hey, has anything changed in the way that you cook based on what you've learned through the training?
That's a really good question. I've never thought of it that way. I think, you know, there's, in terms of cooking, so it's very, in a way, it's very intimate, right? There's like, you know, there's yeah, it's very, you know, there's emotion, there's touch, there's passion, there's, you know, and speaking of energy, there's energy around it. You know, for someone who's really passionate, they'll put a lot more into it, more, you know, more effort, or just, there's just, you know, we joke about, you know, cook with love, but you, like, there is an element of that. And then the opposite of that, just kind of slapping it together like a, you know, a cafeteria lunch lady kind of thing, joke, right? But looking at it, it's, the word that comes to me is nourishment. And so there is something about coming at it now from not the place of technical, which is what, you know, really where I was coming from as well, looking at it with a very technical eye, but just energetically, like, what does this mean to me? You know, what are dinners? What does that mean? What does time together mean? You know, food, we know, like, you know, parties in the kitchen, you know, food ties, you know, societally, everything. There's so much about food and coming together and nourishment and quality time and emotions. So food is elevated in a way, in terms of, you know, I see it differently. I don't see it as just something that has to be put together on a plate and this and negative space and all this kind of stuff. It's, you know, what's the purpose of it? You know, how is this helping someone? What can I do, you know, in terms of preparing this and getting my boys involved and maybe feeding homeless or whatever. Like, it's so powerful, and coming at it from that coaching lens, and just from energy and looking at it in a different, it's just all perspective shift, right? Which is what we do in coaching. It's just changing the perspective, changing the lens, changing the filter. And yeah, that's a really great question. I hadn't thought of it, but now as I'm talking it out, it's a big difference.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, coach.
Cool. Yeah. Just, that's like how we do one thing is how we do everything, right? When we
exactly.
show up. That's awesome. Thanks, man. I was just thinking about that last night as I was thinking about our call today. Claire has another question. Do you think it's easy for a young person still at university like myself, meaning her, to start a career as a coach? I'm worried that my age will be interpreted as inexperience and that older people will have a hard time being coached by someone much younger. Do you know coaches under 25, and what is your advice to overcome that?
Yeah, that's something that's come up. I've heard many times, and I know actually someone in my in my class, she was same thing. I think she was just or just finished university, and she struggled with that as well, and early 20s. And I know a lot of coaches who are in that age range, and I think it's amazing. I think it's important. I think it's needed. And there's no, again, what's the cutoff though? Do you have to be 30? Do you have, like, there, you know,
when are you old enough or good enough?
When are you old enough to, you know, to put that on? you know, what you're bringing is, you know, not only what the skills and everything you're learning, but you're bringing you, and
Yeah.
your experience is unlike anyone else's. Just like your client, you know, when they come to you, their, you know, their journey is unique. And
Yeah.
so who's to judge that your journey is any less important than someone my age?
Right.
You know, there's going to be things that you will have experienced and known that I never will. And
Right.
so, you know, in terms of would an older person not want to be coached? Well, then that's not your client.
Right.
You know, that's not your client. And it's sometimes none of my business what they think, you know, is
Right.
because I know that there are people that you are going to serve, and they're going to love to have you as your coach. And so whatever demographic that looks, whatever niche that looks like, that's within you to tap into that. But in terms of the age, you know, flip side, you know, is there, you too old? Does that mean anything? You know,
Right.
it's just experience.
Yep.
Rather than an age range. It's you know, there's so many people that you can be serving in that age range. And I know people in that, you know, who maybe work with teens, who work with people, millennials, but they can still work in corporate. They can work in whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's just, it's really, you know, it's up to you. If you can just work through that, you know, in terms of like removing those limitations off yourself,
Totally.
then it's all yours. You can serve out there, and people will come, you know,
Yeah.
when you
And
see
if I
that.
could, you know, just even piggyback on that, I would just say, it's like, okay, so if I'm in my younger 20s, and let's just say I'll use the number 22, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if this person is 22 years old, that means you could be coaching anybody from 17, 18, 19, 20, 21,
Yeah.
22, 23, 24, 25, right? So you're comfortable coaching somebody who's a couple years older than you. So that's, you know, 10 years worth of people, and there's billions of those all over the planet, right? So, you know, to say, listen, I can't coach people who are 60, well, then
Mm-hmm.
cool, then don't waste your time thinking about that.
Yeah.
And the other piece to this is that I'll just point out for you guys that coaching is not saying I've had a perfect life, and if you do everything I've done, you're also going to have a perfect life.
Mm-hmm.
Coaching is helping your clients, no matter what age they are, recognize that they have the answers within. They're just blocked by their fears. They're blocked by their limiting beliefs. They're blocked by their past experiences. And so, as we touched on earlier, you're going to come in there and ask them questions they wouldn't have thought to ask themselves because of those fears, etc. And
Yeah.
you're there to use a very specific process that you're trained at iPEC to help people, you know, decide who they want to be. And so even if you're just to only work with people your age, right, that exact 365 days, right, there's still, again, millions of people out there. And so by putting your thought into a space of like, hey, I'm not good enough, I'm not old enough, doesn't serve you or you know, the purpose of being a coach or your calling. So
Yeah. Great.
yeah, just throw that on that. So thanks, Ben. Let's see, we got another one. Tell us the best experience coaching thus far. Was there an aha for the person that your unique experience helped achieve?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. And that's, you know, I can't tell you how many times I get goosebumps. And I try, when I do it like this, I try to show people it doesn't work, but I do get a lot, I do get a lot of goosebumps because, you know, and it happens all the time. It happens very often. And again, it's not anything I'm doing. It's they are coming to a realization that, you know, they have a choice in how they see things and how they, you know, how they experience things, how they, what filter they decide to look at it. And so a lot of the stuff that comes up, they know already, or, you know, or it's been blocked by, like, you know, limiting beliefs and assumptions and interpretations, all these things. But when, you know, you know, our job is just, you know, to ask the right questions, or, you know, ask the questions, get them looking at things just a little bit differently. And sometimes just that subtle shift that creates aha moments left, right, and center. A lot of them actually come, you know, maybe after a session, I'll get an email or a text saying, okay, I don't know what it was. I woke up and all of a sudden I thought this, and then this happened. Oh my gosh, I didn't know this could happen, or I didn't think this would happen to me. And it's a recur, and that's the power of coaching, you know. And again, it's not anything I did specifically, but we all as coaches, we see the potential in everyone. We see what they don't see at that moment. And so when they finally start scraping getting past that into that, tapping into that spirit, tapping into their higher self, whatever it is, and even if it's like corporate, and you know, they just they get like, ooh. And then when I sense it, I get the goosebump. You know? So it happens a lot. And that's really part of the coaching program in terms of just like in the conversations, is that it's just unveiling things, unpeeling and seeing what's there. And people just are like, wow, I didn't know that was there, but it was there all along.
Yeah. Yeah. When you start to look, when as a coach, we're able to shine a light on it, right? And they're
Mm-hmm.
able to say, and then make sense because they know that it's there, because once we kind of uncover the mask and things that are hiding it, they can't help but acknowledge it as the truth, and it gives them buy-in to take action and to start moving forward and to make the shifts in their life that are necessary.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this one. What has been the biggest lesson you've learned on this journey? The thing you wish you could go back and tell yourself when you first started this process?
Would that be the biggest lesson in coaching, or?
Yeah, so I'm reading it as, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned since starting your coaching journey?
It's been a lot of lessons. I think, in terms of in coaching, like coaching itself, one of my greatest lessons was, and this happened early on, was to not hold my agenda. When I come into a session, and it happened once, and, I said earlier, we're not there to fix people and all that. I came into a session with my mindset for some reason that I'm going to do this today. I'm going to make this guy do X, Y, Z, which is the opposite of really what we do. And of course, it was a hard session for me.
It didn't go well.
It was like when he left, it was a face-to-face. He left. I said, what was that? Like, let's not do that again. Yeah. That was painful. Now, his experience, I don't know what his experience was. It may have been like the best session.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't judge that. Again, I'm not him, but for me, what I learned, it was just a great reminder that we're here to hold their agenda. We're here to hold what it is that they're looking for. And it's not for me to judge that. Again, it's going back to, I'm meeting them where they're at. Everything that they've done and said has led them to this point. And I'm here now to, like I said, shine a light on them, be there to move them through to the next part, whatever that may be. And some people, some clients, it takes a long time. It's a slow build. And some people can pivot, immediately. And again, that's great. That's them. That's how they process. That's how they move. But when I saw someone that just took time and I wanted them to pivot, I was, raging against the machine there. It wasn't my place,
right,
to ask them of that in a way that, is counterintuitive, counterproductive. So that was probably my greatest lesson, in terms of just stay with them, hold their agenda. It's up to them.
Love it. And I do love that, specifically because as an admissions coach, people often ask me, like, what makes a great coach? And for me, I think the answer is always the people who are truly able to hold the client's agenda, because so many people who are interested in coaching are fixers, right? They do want to come in and solve all these solutions for everybody else. That's what kind of drove them to them, but that's not what coaching is. And everything you just said is, in my opinion, completely on point. When we can really focus completely on their agenda and get out of the way and be the tool that they need to reach that agenda, and not necessarily the solution of that agenda, makes a big difference. Cool. We've got about 8 minutes left. So I want to get to one or two other questions. Looks like we've got, so this is how did the program help you personally? I mean, you touched on that a little bit, but is there something that's very different about you now compared to when you first started the training, besides like the agenda piece, like on a personal level?
Yeah, absolutely. The changes, even, the people in my class, like the shifts they had, like amazing to watch, because you can't go through this without having gone through it yourself. Like, seeing how your clients, seeing how they go through things. We can only take them as far as we've gone, And so if I have not really kind of opened myself up and taken a look at myself and been coached, and really come to the process with like humility and just openness and honesty, then it's going to be hard for me to ask that of my clients. And so, through, in iPEC, we have, peer coaching. So a couple of rounds of that. So you coach someone, they coach you every week, and you show up and you have your sessions. And so how can you not, have some changes going on, because you're getting coached regularly.
Yeah.
And even, you know, there's someone that even though I finished more than a year ago, there's someone still from my class. Her and I still coach each other once a week.
Yeah.
And so it's been going on for a long time. So, you know, coaches have coaches generally. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's important. Even to this day, I have several coaches because
Yeah.
they're the ones that say, Paulie, you got spinach in your teeth, you know,
Right.
not
Right.
literally, but you know,
Right.
metaphorically.
Occasionally.
And
Right.
so, but you need that, someone to uncover the blind spots and to help you develop. So, absolutely, going through the program, you know, unless you're resisting it actively, you're going to fall into this thing where you are growing in so many ways, and you may not even notice it. It's
Yep.
usually other people who will notice that there's been a shift in you. And so it's just very important that I, you know, allowed myself to be, to go through that and to be open and to be malleable and just understand that, like, I'm like anyone else. Like, I can always improve and always see things differently and just come to a place where I just feel better about myself.
Trust the process.
Absolutely.
As they say.
As they say.
As they say. That's awesome, man. So listen, we got about 4 minutes left. And with that, I just want to let everybody know where they can find you if they want more information. There's a couple other great questions come up. And so maybe if they can reach you on your website.
Yeah.
What's the best place for people to find you?
My website, www.paulsilvacoaching.com. And there's a form there too. You can, or email paul@paulsilvacoaching.com. I love getting questions. I'd gladly take them. And so you can find me there, and that's where you'll see, you know, just learn a little bit about me and what I do and what kind of offerings I have. And so that's the main place of contact.
Cool. And then social media wise, I follow you on Instagram. Are there other places that you hang
There's
out
Instagram.
at?
Yeah. And Facebook, I'm quite active. That's Coach Paul Silva. I can't even remember what my Instagram handle is. Maybe you can share that. It's like trying to remember my own phone number. But Coach Paul Silva, definitely on Facebook and Instagram. Those are my two main places. I'm very active there. So you'll always find me there. And even in the iPEC forum, very active there as well. And then I also have, I have two podcasts. One is recovery based. I'll talk about recovery, and that's buzzkillpod.com or just buzzkillpod. And there's a link, I think, coming. It's on SoundCloud. You'll find me there. And I also have a book, and the other podcasts are both the same name. I'm going to show it. I just happen to have
one. Please. Love it, man.
Longing for the Spirit. And so that is the book, came out in November 2017, but still, it's something I give to my clients. My clients, when they sign up to get a copy of this, I'm still selling these. I have a podcast that's not recovery, and that's mindset and spirit and all that. And that's also called Longing for the Spirit. And both of those can be found on www.longingforthespirit.com.
Perfect. I love it. And quickly, because we still have 2 minutes, I'm just curious if you could give tell me about the book real quick. Like what's your elevator pitch on the book?
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I have an this all came from a blog that started when I was in recovery called Message in a Bottle. And so this is a collection of like mini essays, if you will, just like humorous, full of spirit, just transparent, talking about how I my recovery through the lens of spirituality, or it can be spirituality through the lens of recovery. Take your pick. But it does have a good level of humor in there, and also some stories, kind of like what sort of set the table, so to speak, I felt for my going into alcoholism. And so it's not a memoir. It's not a blow by blow of, drinking or anything like that. It's just really nuggets and it's broken into, fear and all these kind of other traits and stuff like that really help me to see things differently and to shift my perspective, and little aha moments and things with family and all that. So I've been told it's a quick read, but it does have a lot of, there is spirit and there is a lot of mindset stuff. And it's funny. I've kind of gone through this a few times lately, and it's funny how coaching kind of just really fits into that, because it is about changing the way I was thinking. Yeah. And the growth that came from that. And that's really what the book is about.
Love it. Perfect timing.
Oh, sweet.
Paul, listen, man, I'm actually definitely going to check out the book. I really, really appreciate your time today. I appreciate your authenticity, your presence, and all that you're doing for the world, literally by being on purpose. I hope that everybody else got as much of it as I did. If anybody else out there is interested in learning more about iPEC in general and to have your own experience, obviously you can contact us at admissions@ipeccoaching.com. You can reach me directly at rstanley@ipeccoaching.com. I work as an admissions coach. I'm happy to help you out there as well. If you enroll before the end of December, there's some amazing tuition reductions available. Our next training cycle begins in March of 2020. So feel free to reach out to us there. And then otherwise, Paul, keep up the awesomeness, man. We appreciate who you are and what you're doing. And I look forward to connecting again soon.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. It was great being here. Went by quickly. Thank you.
I was about to say that was a quick out. Cool. Have an amazing rest of your day, everybody.